Hello and welcome to today's session, evaluating your effort to move your AP to IL. My name is Domas and I'll be your presenter for the next 45 minutes. So shortly about today's session, what are going to be the topics. So first one, ways to get your AP to IL or possible ways to upgrade solution to IL, importance of evaluation, what are the upgrade tasks, evaluation to different target dynamics BC versions, and why the estimate will have a huge difference in hours, preparing your evaluation and evaluation itself, and what are the alternatives in the market, and the takeaway of a session. So before we move on to the first topic, I would like to introduce myself a bit more and give you a background about the company which I'm working for and why we're able to speak about this topic. So as I mentioned, my name is Domas Kudzevicius. I am 10 plus years in the Microsoft Dynamics NAV and BC business. Majority of the time I've spent in the technical departments. I've been a developer, had a bit of a consultancy experience. I've been a project manager and the development team leader as well. And the current position in the SimpleNova is a CTO, and my responsibilities are to drive company's technology strategy and supervise the technical department. And about the company, SimpleNova is a development center type company based in Vilnius, Lithuania. Our major expertise is in the Dynamics NAV Business Central upgrades. And we also provide the development services as well. We build some tools for the upgrades as we have experience in this process. So each year we provide around 200 evaluations for the BC upgrades, and we perform around 50 to 60 upgrades per year. So I believe it's quite an experience for us to talk about and share our knowledge to the community. Okay, so let's move on to the first topic and how to get to AL. So first path I would call reimplementation, or someone calls it clean start. So basically you perform data migration or just move trailing balances and master data from your old solution to the Business Central, and start then the implementation process again. You're just starting to document, to design the functionalities, to get trying to get the functional requirements and starting implementing it from the scratch. What are the benefits of the side? First one, from my point of view, that's of course, you can get rid of the functionalities which are no longer in use or outdated. The second point, I believe that the end users or your users will be able to use Business Central much earlier than if you would go with the upgrade path. And you have an option to change, switch, get rid of some of the add-ons which you had in your solution. What's regarding the cost, I think that the question is always stays open. What would it end up with? But I believe it might be a bit cheaper if you would go with if you have a big solution, and it would be probably a bit cheaper than going through the complete upgrade path, which I would talk about now. So the second option, how to get to the IL, is to go regular upgrade path. So regarding that data, it means that you're gonna go through full data migration. So you're gonna use Microsoft provided toolkits and go step by step until you're gonna get your data to the latest Business Central. And what's regarding the customizations, you're gonna have to perform the full regular upgrade of the objects. So I've shared the picture in the slide or diagram, how your customizations or IP have to move across the Business Central path to get your solution on the BC17. So in this path, you see I've marked in red the most critical and crucial parts in the upgrade, where the most effort is required to perform that. So if your solution is on NAV 2009 or older, or in other words, in the classic line, then you will have to perform RTC transformation to make your objects available on the RTC, then upgrade it to the latest BC14 version, the last version which is supported by supported with the CIL. And from there, you're going to be able to use text to IL tool and upgrade the solution to the IL. As majority of the customers and the end users are on the RTC client or IL, so today I won't be talking about the RTC transformation because it's now much less required, I believe. And today we're going to be talking about the second red line, the IL transformation. By the way, in our company, we still have some clients who comes to us to upgrade their solution from the classic line. So it's not a majority, but still there are users who use classic line. Right, so why evaluation is so important? First of all, evaluation is kind of tool which helps you to manage the risks. And to manage the risks, you need to, first of all, you need to understand what are the parts or what are the tasks in the upgrade, and you need to evaluate each of these tasks. So when you have evaluation, you have the whole scope of a project, and you are able to identify which part of the upgrade is more tedious, which part of the project is less time consuming, right? So when you have such information, you're able to put all the project in the timeline and find the required resources for each of the tasks. What's important here to mention that not every task requires the most experienced developers. There are some tasks which could be performed by the less experienced developers. There are some tasks like refactoring, working around the limitations, where the most experienced developers are, of course, the most useful. So regarding the timeline, and if you have all tasks identified, you're able to allocate your available resources or their capacity, and to find the budget. So that's the point where you can get your financial overview of the upgrade project. So now we have figured out that the evaluation is really important to get your timeline, to get your budget, and also it's important when you're getting to the functionality, right? So with the evaluation, you're able to overcome or identify before the project some of the functional risks. Still, if you're doing the detailed evaluation, you're digging deep into the objects, digging deep into the code, and in some part of the code, you can identify that this won't clearly work in the AL, and at this point in time, you can allocate much more time for the particular object instead of getting to the upgrade and then hitting up the showstopper, and which will eat your budget and eat your time, right? So evaluation is able to identify the project scope, is able to identify how many of the project budget it will require, and what are the functional risks. Once we know why evaluation is so important, now we can get to the upgrade tasks and try to figure out what are they and what actually you have to do in the upgrade. So I've split all the tasks into two groups. First group is more object-related task or amount of changes related tasks, and the second group is the common tasks, which relates to the various different aspects of the project, like database size and so on. So I'll talk about each of them and give you a bit more details. So the first bit is the transformation, or the results review after the text-to-AL tool. So once you're gonna run CIL objects through the text-to-AL tool, you will get the results, and they won't work straight away, straight out of the box. So you will require time to go through each of the objects to sort the compilation errors, to fix some properties, grid layouts, to check how it looks like in the web client, and once it's done, then it comes to the second part, which is called the code refactoring. So code refactoring is the part basically where you have the AL code converted as it was in a CIL, but it doesn't work there. So it might be some file management or .NET usage, and you need to think of how to make it work again in the AL. So it might end up that you're gonna clear your code and start developing it completely from scratch. The next part is events. So it relates to the standard objects and the code changes of the standard objects. So if you haven't done that in the CIL, then it means that it's probably time to do that in the AL. So you're gonna move all standard code modifications to the separate objects, code units, and try to subscribe to the published Microsoft events. And that's how you're gonna not modify, but they extend the solution, right? Because previously in CIL, we used to do that. We used to modify directly the standard code units, standard tables, the code inside the tables. And now if we want to get to the extensions, real extensions without the BaseApp modifications, then we need to move all the code changes into events. And the last bit is a managing translation files. So we used to have the caption ML properties in the CIL. Now we have to manage the XLIF files. So that requires additional time as well. Now, talking about the second group, the common tasks. So the data migration. Data migration amount of required time for that will be more dependent on the database size than the amount of the changes in your solution. The larger database you have, the more time you will have to allocate for that. Of course, if you have more custom tables, then additional time will be required there, because you will need to create some temporary tables to migrate data from the CIL to the IL structure. Then the next bit is testing. Again, testing relates a bit to the amount of the code changes you have in your solution, but it also relates to the company's internal policies, because we tend to see 3 different types of the partners which we work with. So the first part or first group of the partners would be the partners who have automated tests built, and they have their own, let's say, libraries, which saves them a lot of time, and they run all the tests to see if it works. Also, they add a bit of visual testing or visual review on the pages, and that's how they do their testing. The second group of the partners have a bunch of or big set of testing scenarios which they perform it manually. So for that kind of partner, the testing time will be twice or maybe 3 times bigger than for the previous one. And the third group of the partners, which give away directly to their customer and allows to perform testing on their side. So yeah, I mean that each company is different, and each company has its own policies or rules how they perform testing. So it's quite difficult to tell what amount of time should be allocated generally for all the partners, right? So it depends on what you have, what type of partner you are or developer. And the last bit is the project management. So if you're working with the end user, if you're working with multiple developers, then you will have to allocate time for that you will require to communicate, to assign tasks, to delegate the tasks, and to review the tasks, and so on. So again, it's depending on the situation, who is performing the upgrade. And last bit, probably not mentioned here, but it's a really small addition of a time in hours. It's of course the preparation for the upgrade, so comparison, all database restoration, and so on. So yeah. Right, so upgrading to on-prem and cloud. What are the differences between those upgrades, and why the evaluations will have huge difference in hours between two target versions? So, right, so if we're talking about the main differences, which causes the hours fluctuation, right? The first one is the events. So if you're upgrading to the on-prem extension, you're still able to go the old regular way and to modify the standard code. So if you decide that you have you want to save some budget and you want to have solution working on the target on the BC version, but you don't care about the future upgrades, or you're happy to do the future upgrades in a regular way to when you are merging the changes, then you can go without events and modify the base app. What usually in our practice, what happens that there are a lot of events missing in the Business Central, and you have no place to hook to, right? And you decide that you're going to move this change in the base app to the base app. You will send the request to Microsoft to add the new event in the future releases, and somewhere in the future, with the next upgrade, you might move your base app modification to the events when the new event will be available. Okay, so that's out of topic a bit, but yeah, if we're talking on-prem version, so we usually use both options. And if you are going to the SaaS extension, there is no option. So, or you're moving your standard code changes to the events, or you're getting rid of them, because that's how it works in SaaS. Then it comes to the .NET Interop. So on the on-prem extension, you can use .NET Interop with a bit of limitations of the web client, but you're still able to use it. And if you are going to the SaaS extension, then it means you need to get rid of all the .NET Interop functionalities and redesign them using standard APIs or standard provided objects like for the web service calls and so on. So that's where additional time will be required for the refactoring. Exactly the same with the file management. So you have the file management on-prem version, but when it comes to the SaaS, there is no file system. So you'll have to refactor, redevelop your functionality using Azure Blob Storage or the OneDrive or something. So again, additional time for refactoring. Now we're talking, when we're talking about the data migration, the steps required to get to the latest Business Central version are exactly the same. So you need to perform regular data migration. On the on-prem extension, you will need to perform regular data upgrade to the and for the SaaS extension. But when you're gonna get to the latest version, to move your data from on-prem to cloud, you're gonna need to use the intelligent cloud tool. So that's going to be additional time. And again, you will need to perform that after the regular migration. And now the last bit is related more to the code. So the standard methods and the table scopes. On-prem, if you're upgrading to the on-prem extension, you're able to use all the global functionalities, all the global functions, procedures, which are in the Business Central. And if you're upgrading to SaaS extension, then you are limited only to the procedures which have scope on cloud. So in this example, the scope on-prem, procedure find text, if you would use it in your custom code unit, you would be able to access that if you're upgrading to on-prem extension. But if you would decide to go to SaaS extension, then you will need to think of, again, how to refactor this function, how to redevelop your functionality without this function. So that's where additional time will be required as well. And usually it builds around 40–30% of the on-prem extension time additionally if you're going to a SaaS extension. Right, so now we had the on-prem and cloud comparison. And what happens if we would decide to go to AppSource? So in the AppSource, you will have exactly the same limitations as the SaaS extension per tenant. So you will have to use only events. You won't be able to use .NET Interop, file management, and the method and table scopes only available to the cloud only. But additionally, you will have to run through the 20 different rules of technical validation and to follow the 20 marketing requirements. So that's again a huge amount of time will be added on the top. The technical rules will, as example, will have such requirements as all the objects and the fields will have to have the suffixes and prefixes. You will have to cover at least part of the solution in automated tests and so on. So that's again more and more and more additional time will be required there. So these are the main differences between the on-prem, cloud, and AppSource extensions in why the difference in the time will be huge. Now let's move to the next topic, preparation for evaluation. So, or in other words, what you need to have or what you need to have to get ready before the evaluation starts to make it successful evaluation. So first of all, I will go through all the three groups quickly, but then we will go bit by bit, and I will try to explain with little examples each of them. So, yep. So first of all, you're going to need to have some kind of software for logging object statistics, like Excel, Google Sheet, or any other sheet type software for the calculations. Then you're going to need 3 sets of objects in the text file. So first object set will be a completely standard solution on which you have built your customizations. The second set of objects is going to be your standard objects from your custom solution. So basically your modifications. And the third set is going to be only the custom objects. Then we need for some kind of tool or software like Notepad++, PowerShell, or Merge Tool, or any type of tool which has comparison function inside that is required to see the differences in the text files and to see what you have added to your solution. So going now bit by bit. So let's start with the software or the logging the object statistics. Basically, you need kind of a sheet where you could take Object Manager, copy all the objects, and paste it to the Excel spreadsheet or any other sheet. And that will be your guide running through which you will be able to put some notes and add some time per object. At the very end, you're going to sum up all the objects time and get the final result. So yeah, use the all development environment open Object Manager, select all objects and copy them to the sheet. Once it's done, then you can move on to the next stage and prepare the object sets. So each solution has the same concept of the modifications, right? So underneath you have the complete standard Dynamics NAV or Business Central solution. Then you have on the top, you have modified some of the standard objects and also created your own custom objects. So that's where 3 sets should come from. First set of objects should be completely vanilla version of NAV on which you have built solution. So you have to export all the objects in the text format from the standard NAV version. Then in your custom solution, select all the standard objects and also export them as a text. So yeah, that's how you're gonna identify modifications between standard and custom solutions. And then the third set should be your custom objects. So in the customer range or in your own range, select all the objects and export them to the text file. Once you have all 3 object sets ready, then you can compare the standard objects and against the standard modified objects. And in this case, you see that with the text editor, which has compare function, in this case it was Notepad++, I have compared those 2 text files and see the results in some kind of object that some key was added or some field was added. And that's how you'll have to identify all of the changes in the solution. And so as well for that, of course, you're going to need to use the all development environment, as I mentioned before, not only for exporting the text files or exporting the object list, but also you will, from time to time, you will need to open the object directly in the all development environment in CL, or to preview how the page or report layout looks like, or just get a bit deeper dive into the object and to analyze where are the references coming from or going to, and so on. Because only from text file, sometimes it's difficult to identify, is it a complex object or not? Does it has complex layout of the page, or it's simple, or it's simple page. So from time to time, the old development environment will also be in use. So you can use the text editor for comparison, or you can use the PowerShell, which is which has quite useful feature. The command called compare nav application object, which allows you to compare standard and modified standard object sets to each other, define the path where you're going to save the deltas, and run the function. And what you're going to end up with is a set of delta files where you're going to be able to identify how many, what type of objects were changed, and using some basic text editor, Notepad, you would be able to open each of the delta files and run through the changes and see what was actually changed. So this type of analysis is also very useful for the evaluation. And now, what are the evaluation techniques and how to perform that? So all the tools which I mentioned before mostly are used for the review object by object, right? So if you're going to compare using the PowerShell script, the two sets of files to the standard objects, you're going to go then through each delta and check what's actually inside in the object, look for the unsupported cases, look which object, which code changes has to be moved to the events, or which gonna hit some kind of limitation in the AL. Also, I suggest using the breaking changes file, which is provided by Microsoft, to see what critical changes were done in the standard, and if you are using them, then it means that you will have to refactor your code as well. So basically, what it means that you're gonna go through all the objects, identify all the cases which you're gonna find in the objects, and allocate time according to your experience. The problem is here that we have built our experience through the year. We've been working with the upgrades for the last 8 years or something, and now we know how much time we need to perform one or other task. I cannot tell you what is your experience, right? So the same task for two different developers might vary, and it might have actually a huge difference between them. So in such type of the evaluation, you probably won't hit accurate estimates, but you're gonna see the entire solution estimate more accurate than the ballpark evaluation. So what are the pros when you're going with a detailed review? So in general, it must be the most accurate evaluation. And of course, the problems with this evaluation that it's really time consuming, and it requires to have experience in upgrades here. Just for instance, one of our first projects with the upgrades into AL, we've spent actually on the project twice as much time as we have evaluated initially, and that's because we didn't had any experience in the past to evaluate that correctly. So over the time, we've built our experience, and now we're really our evaluations are really optimal for us. It won't be necessary exactly the same for any other developers, but as we know the process, as we optimized that, now we are going, yeah, we fit all the time in the time frame. So my suggestion here, and I hope that today is my kind of takeaway for you, would be to use the ballpark evaluation. So ballpark evaluation would be the, let's say, evaluation based on SimpleNova's experience. By no means it's an accurate evaluation. It won't be accurate, but at least you will have an idea how big your solution is, or yeah, is it a big project upcoming, or is it small? If it's big, should I dig deeper in that, or not? Yeah. So what is required for ballpark evaluation is find amount of change objects per object type. So from my past slides, you can use the PowerShell to do that. And you will see how many files you have for the tables, for the pages, and multiply by given values, the averages. And I will present those values in the next slide. And I will talk a bit more in details how I came up with those values. But now what are the pros of this type of evaluation? So yeah, it's quite easy process. It's quick to perform. But the problem is that, well, it could not be treated as an accurate evaluation for 100%. It shouldn't be treated as such, but at least you will have an idea, and based on that, you can plan your following steps. Are you gonna deep into detailed review, or gonna go to some kind of a partner or something, right? So averages per object types, and a few words how I have aggregated this data here. So as I mentioned before, we perform around 200 evaluations each year. So I've took this year, 2020, all evaluations to the AL, sum up all the time, sum up all the amount of the objects per type, right? All the values, and got the averages. So that's how those averages appear here. And I've split all these averages into two groups, the standard ones and then standard objects and the custom objects. So as example, if you have, I don't know, payment terms table changed, it means that you have to multiply from the value for the standard table. And if you have a kind of own custom table built, then you have to multiply from the custom value. Yeah, we understand that some of the tables, like sales header, will require much more time than 40 minutes, but in this example, right? But the payment terms table will require less, but I have accumulated all the data, and that's the averages of all our estimates, all our evaluations, and all object types. So, yep. So table 40 1 minute, the standard table goes for the 41 minute, and if you have a custom one, you should multiply it from the 5 minutes. Why the 41? Because in this value is also included the code movement to the events and all the refactoring cases. If you have the custom page, then you have to go with the 8 minutes. If you have the page, which is the standard one, and you have to create the page extension, then it has to go for the 28 minutes. If you have the code unit, you have 13 minutes. And if you have the custom code unit, then it should go with the 38 minute. And I'll try to explain why it's a huge difference in the time. Usually we tend to find in the custom code units the majority of our refactoring work. Let's say all the .NET, all the file management, all the stuff is built usually in the code unit. So that's where we spend the most time doing the refactoring. Reports exactly the same. The standard ones only the 16 minutes, but with the custom ones, it's 25 minutes, because in the custom reports, you usually tend to find a lot of file management. And again, that you require to refactor there. For each of the menu suite, we add the around 30 minutes that's required for reviewing it. After the tools, if it's all the links available in the web client. If not, then you have to adjust the properties accordingly. And for XML ports, we haven't found any standard ones modified, but we found that we usually add 11 minutes per XML port, per custom XML port. And we haven't found any modified queries and the custom queries yet. So there are no values. So once again, when you're going to multiply your values from your object amounts with these values, you will get at least overview of the project. Are you looking to the big scope project or a smaller one? And after that, you can plan your next steps accordingly. Either will you go by yourself and then gonna dig deep into the solution and try to review objects by object, or you're gonna try to find the partner who can provide you some statistics on that. So what are alternatives in the market? So as I mentioned before, and as I talked before, it's quite difficult to all partners have enough experience to perform evaluation, to have time to perform that. And today in the market, there are several companies which are working with the upgrades a lot. They have upgrades experience and they have their own tools built. As an example, in SimpleNova, we have an evaluation tool built, which automatically does all the things that we've discussed in the previous slides. But even though after that, we require around from 4 to 8 hours to finalize our proposal or finalize our quote, because still there is a lot of manual work required to review all the objects, to prepare them for the evaluation, to find the fake changes, and so on and so on. So I think that you should try those services which partners provide, because usually they're free, and yeah, it's quite easy to use to apply for them. And for the upgrades, exactly the same. There are companies which have huge experience in the upgrades, and why should try to do it by yourself and try to learn new things once, which will be required maybe once or two per year, when you can try to see what the partners can offer to you. And company like us, like SimpleNova, we have our own tool set, which we have built over the past years with our experience, and we usually use them internally. So try to, even though if you're not considering that, just try to apply for to the partner, to the other companies to check if they're able to provide you quotes or assistance, and then compare to your own demand and see where you can get with this. Right, so and today's takeaway of the session, the first point, that evaluation is a key to successful upgrade project. The more time you invest into evaluation, more precise evaluation of a project you will get. So by this, I mean that if you need to get the accurate evaluation, you'll have to go object by object and dig deep. And if you have no time for evaluation, find someone who does, or try to contact with the other partners who have experience in upgrades. So that's it for today. And now I think it's time for a Q&A session.